We got to bring in Brent Hershey of Baseball HQ to get some good debates going. How you doing, Brent?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Not too bad. Did you check out the co-manager draft recap last night? You made a good appearance there.
No, actually, I failed to do that. I was unable to, although my partner contacted me today and we had a good little Twitter discussion about it. I'm looking forward to checking it out when it posts.
Nice.
Because I
Yeah, we will. We'll be posting all the panels on YouTube later this week, so definitely stay tuned for that. There are many I want to look over as well. There was a really funny exchange where you're saying, "I trust my partner," and then the very next pick, you go, "Oh, I don't think I trust my partner anymore."
that
And
was
that was early on.
that was a fun exercise. A really cool concept, a fun draft to do.
Well, it made it so much better that you were part of it. So thanks so much, Brent.
Sure thing.
Next up is Ellen Adair. How we doing, Ellen?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. And I got to say, we got a lot of interesting prizes offered to us. I was very happy to see yours. You want to talk about that for a second?
Oh, yeah. So I have been trying to build a website, but I haven't done it yet. It's just been a crazy month for me. And I am drawing baseball pictures by commission. So if people want me to draw a picture of their favorite player or, I don't know, their dad's favorite player to give to them for Father's Day or something like that, I am happy to do that. And I do have some examples up right now on an Instagram account at Ellen Draws Baseball. So
Nice.
you can just, until I get that website going, you can just contact me on Twitter or on Instagram. And yes, we are raffling away. If we get enough of those,
We can do it.
yes, we can do it. We can do it, y'all.
We have 6 hours. We can get to it.
I would like to draw somebody's favorite baseball player for them.
Well, it's great having you here. And you've also done some work as well. You've been writing a bit.
Yeah, so I write on the Turf Sports upon occasion, but they're very nice and flexible with me. So when I'm like, oh my God, I'm filming all of this month, I can't write anything, they're like, that's cool. So that's kind of what I need.
Well, that works out very well. Congrats on Real Muto.
Thank you.
And I'm very excited to have you here with PitchCon today.
Broken thumb and all. I'll still take him.
Next up is Carlos Marcano. Welcome, Carlos. You are on mute, unfortunately.
Rookie mistake.
Hey, many have done it. It's okay. I've done it multiple times.
How are you doing, guys? I'm just happy to be here, to be honest.
Oh, it's very exciting, and yeah, one of the new additions here at Petros, of course, joined the team late last year. Really excited that you were able to also translate our Fantasy 101 sections. We'll be rolling more of these out this week, but Carlos, yeah, really awesome work you've done.
No, the heavy lifting was done before. I just, put it in Spanish. It was already there.
Well, I'll also take a look at a lot of other work that Carlos has done, including Quotient, which highlights some very interesting numbers for many hitters. So definitely check that stuff out. But great having you here today.
I'm the most happy man today. So thanks.
Love it. And last but not least is Rob Silver. Welcome, Rob.
How are you doing, Nick? I'm the third or fourth happiest guy today, apparently.
Now, if you remember, last year Rob Silver was here, and guess what? We called that panel Player Debates 2020. So we had to bring someone back for that. And I'm very happy it's you, Rob.
I'm apparently the only person who didn't go totally nuts on last year's panel. It got a little bit out of hand last year. Apparently, I'm the one guy who wasn't voted off the island. So great to be back.
There you go. You can now actually be our Jeff Probst for this. But no, actually, that's going to be Doug leading through this panel. I'm really looking forward to this one. Really curious who you guys are going to bring up. And once again, thank you so much for being a part of PitchCon.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right, everybody. Good to see you all. Two songs come immediately to mind right off the bat. The first is Tiffany's. I think we're alone now that Nick has left us. And the second is Vanessa Williams' Save the Best for Last. Two powerhouse ballads for a powerhouse of a panel that we have here today. Day 4 of the epic PitchCon event. Children behave everywhere. Major props to Nick Pollock, who's probably been up for the last 4 days and has probably had about 46 cups of coffee. Tons of appreciation and thanks to all those involved and those that have contributed to such a wonderful cause, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about some baseball today, but we're also here to raise some support for Infeeding America. I'm excited to be here with this great group to debate some players for the upcoming 2021 season. These debates today will silence all of fantasy baseball Twitter at least for an hour. So, like, when you go to Twitter, maybe we'll just see replace some TikTok baked feta pasta recipes and Alex Fast overlays. So we'll just have those hang out there for a little bit once this debate is over. You know, I know last year Paul Spoyer did a fantastic job moderating this panel, and those are giant shoes to fill. So I'll do my absolute best, as Nick kindly put it, and as Rob has already alluded to. I'll just be the Jeff Probst of this whole discussion. I'll keep some things rolling, staying out of the way, though. But I will say that if you're on the wrong side of the debate, by sheer numbers, we will have to extinguish the flame, as the tribe has spoken. We have 6-player battles here to discuss this afternoon. I'll start by kicking it off to one of you, and then we can get the opinions and the thoughts of everyone else on this esteemed panel. I wanted to touch upon some hot names that have been widely discussed. All of these players super close in ADP. I looked up DC Draft Champions ADP data from the past 30 days. I didn't want to bring us too deep into the rabbit hole of really late round players, but sometimes you're up in a draft and there are 2 enticing names in front of you. So hopefully today we can help shed some light on what our expert panels are thinking about here. So let's jump into our first player battle. As you've heard enough from me already, between 2 top 20 starting pitchers. We've seen and heard that starting pitching is being pushed up a lot in this year's draft. And then let's take a look at Zach Gallen and Kenta Maeda. They're neck and neck according to their ADP. Gallen is around 35, Maeda around 44 to that DC, regarding to your league format. Ellen, let's start with you. Who are you taking between these 2 powerhouse arms?
I'm so excited that you started with me because this is incredibly difficult for me because these are my boys. I had Maeda on literally every single team that I drafted last year. And yet I'm going to go with Gallen. I'm just such a Gallen gal. I mean, I was also obviously like hugely on him, in on him last year. And it was partially just like the cost for Maeda. Anyway, for me with Gallen, like it's just that 4-pitch mix. And it's that his changeups are exactly like chocolate dipped strawberries. And he commands all of it spectacularly. And he's outperformed his peripherals in the last 2 seasons, which is totals around 150 innings. But his ERA was also regularly lower than his FIP in the minors, so it's possible that he just continues to do so. Also, if we see him pitch more in line with his xERA or with his FIP, that's fine. And he's been very consistent over the sample that we have of him in the majors. And David Adler just wrote that Gallen led the majors in percentage of pitches on the edge of the strike zone in this past season, which is just like, I want to say something inappropriate about edging, but I am here for it. Like, oh my God. Looking at his heat maps, I can't handle myself. He hit the edge of the zone 50% of the time. So basically this means that with 2 strikes, he can hit the zone a little bit more and fool batters. So like, talk to me about a deep arsenal, please. And Nick was always making the point last season that he doesn't give in to batters, so his walk rate might be a little higher. It could also be that his command improved with dotting the edges of the zone this season. But I think it's more likely that people mistook his 10% walk rate from the previous season for poor command rather than confidence that he's just really going after guys. So I think his whip will probably be higher than Maeda's, but I have to go with Gallen. Actually, I have this choice in a keeper league about Gallen versus Maeda. Who am I going to keep? And I think it's going to be Gallen.
Who wants to go after that? Brett, you want to chime in here on your thoughts between these
Sure.
two?
Yeah, I don't have any one-liners quite like that, but I'm going to actually take the other side. I think Gallen. I mean, there's lots of like there. Certainly, his age, the previous workload, health, the deep arsenal. But I think we're jumping the gun a little bit this year, having him where his ADP's at. I just think he's not quite at that level. And when I look at him as compared to where Maeda's gone, and I don't expect Kenta's performance to be on that 2020 level for 6 months. But from a skills perspective, there's much more of a track record there. The whole, throwing more sliders and changeups last year, means he's adjusting at that point. So I give a little more credence to, his improvements that way. And I think he's more likely to log a higher innings, which I think, as we talk about the pitchers, especially here in this panel, for me anyway, I think about all the innings I think a lot of us are going to be chasing due to the short season and the workloads and the likely increased injuries. So especially with that sort of 10 or so pickish difference, I'm going to be a Maeda man, I guess, rather than a Gallen gal, maybe.
I want to be a Maeda man too. It's just
Rob, what do you have to
hard.
say?
Well, Ellen was very compelling. Here's what I struggle with. Brent makes the point, and I don't disagree with the point, that Maeda is more reliable in terms of volume. What a crazy time to be alive when Maeda is considered a able workhorse. And yet, I don't know that Brent is wrong. And if you look at Maeda and say, I have more confidence he's going to get to 180, 190 innings than Zach Gallen, then I think it's a no-brainer. Because on a per-inning basis, I think the skills of Maeda are certainly no worse than Gallen. I would argue if he consolidates any of the gains from 2020, then he's better than Gallen on a per-inning basis. I just don't feel confident that that's true. Like, we talk about recency bias all the time going into this year. Maeda's health is recency bias. Maeda being a 32 start, 6 innings a start guy is recency bias, unless it was all just the Dodgers. So I don't know. It's a really tough one, which I know is a really crappy debating line. I don't know. It's close. It could go either way. I also love the potential of a pitcher with 50% ground ball rate pitching in front of a left side of an infield with Simmons and Josh Donaldson. And while who knows how many games you'll get that healthy left side of the infield, that is a big improvement on what he was pitching in front of last year. So if gun to my head, I'm not taking the sexy strawberry, chocolate dip strawberry, I think it was, in Gallen. I lean Maeda. I don't know that I love either of them because both of them have a lot more risk, I think, than people assume. I don't have confidence either of them are getting to 180 innings. And you can say that about a lot of pitchers this year, or most pitchers this year. But I'm taking this pitcher in the 3rd round, so I need that from him. I don't think I'm getting it from either of those pitchers.
Carlos, want to round us out here?
Yeah, I mean it's really, really close to be honest. I think it's closer than most of people think, because sometimes when you get a side, you just run with it, But when I was checking the numbers and I'm trying to put together 2019 and 2020 to try to have a better track record, and their numbers are very close, really, really close for both of them. For both of them. So, when this happens, I usually go with the proven guy, and this is Maeda for this instance. And I love that he's now throwing his slider like 40% of the time. He flipped the use of his fastball, and he's using his slider a lot, which is great. And he doesn't have the worst fastball ever, and he kept the speed for it too. He's supposedly doing something to keep pumping the speed. I read something about spring training, but it could be another best shape of my life thing that you usually see it in this time of the year. But I'm leaning Maeda, to be honest. They are very close together, and maybe, and I'm taking also. It may sound lousy if I say it this way, but you could go find it with either of them. But I will lean on Maeda, to be honest.
Very disappointing. The first player debate that we have, Ellen is headed to Redemption Island first. The tribe has spoken. Everybody going with Kent Maeda here. Who feels worse though? Do Dodgers fans feel worse, or do Miami Marlins fans feel worse? I mean, both these pitchers traded from their respective first starts. I know that Zach Allen was also in Arizona, but are we feeling he is in Arizona? But are we feeling that Miami Marlins fans are feeling worse about giving up on Zach? Or are we feeling worse that that the Dodgers are giving up on Mr. Maeda there?
If you're a Dodgers fan and you're bitching about your starting rotation, shut up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Well,
I was going
Rob-
to say they
Rob-
can probably console themselves with their World Series ring.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rob put it very eloquently right there. So let's get into our next player battle duo to enter the arena. That's between two of the most talked about power and speed outfielders in all of fantasy. As Alex Fast likes to say, we have Randy Kiss from Arozarena taking his power, his pleasure, and his pain against Trent Grisham, who looks to sit atop of that loaded San Diego lineup. Randy Arozarena is around an ADP of 55. Trent Grisham around 62. Rob, let's lead it off with you. Who do you like between these two up-and-coming outfielders?
I tweeted out last week that does it concern you that Grisham in September of last year hit last against every single lefty that San Diego faced? And honestly, I might as well have tweeted out saying, let's debate Middle East peace, abortion, and who's the true party in the U.S., the Democrats or the Republicans, for the reaction. I insulted everybody's firstborn child because people were so angry that I would say anything even slightly negative, which is I'm worried where Trent Grisham may be hitting against lefties. Padres faced about a third lefty starters last year, and given the depth and options that they have, it's not therefore that he sucks. It's not that he's going to bat last against everybody. It's not that he's going to be sitting against lefties. I worry a little bit for, again, my fourth round pick that he may be hitting ninth, eighth, because there's no DH, which sucks in the National League. Being an eighth place hitter with the pitcher coming up after you is awful. All that being said, I would still take him over the Rose, and the reason is, if I'm taking either of these players in the fourth round, it's because I need speed. And both of them obviously offer you more than just speed. They have the potential to offer you a real nice speed power combo. But I am pouncing on them because I've gone pitcher before them, or I've gone with like a Freddie Freeman type. So I need to get kind of a 15 stolen base there. And I feel more confident that you will get 15 plus stolen bases out of sometimes eighth place hitter Trent Grisham than I do about the alternative. So that is why, gun to my head, if I think of a hypothetical where I'm taking one of them, he is the player I would be taking in the fourth round.
Yeah, DVR jumping into the chat. This community never overreacts to anything. What is Rob talking about? Fantastic comment there from DVR. Brent, what are your thoughts on between these two outfielders?
I mean, I think Rob, you make a good point about the if you're taking them here, you're likely going after stolen bases, or that's part of the equation. And I do think one thing about Arozarena that worries me a little, or that I think about, is that his stolen base history per caught stealing has not been very good throughout the minors. And though even a lot of projections, and our projections too, have him up 15, 17, 20-ish stolen bases. I mean, I think that's something to kind of consider there. I actually like Arozarena a little more. I mean, the whole story obviously is crazy. I mean, he doesn't come up till August 30th and had actually more postseason at bats than he did in the regular season. And obviously the home runs, he's not going to. No one continues to hit one of every two fly balls over the fence. So we know that's going to go back down. But I trust his batting average a little bit more than Grisham, and I think the overall mix of what I see with the Arozarena is enough for me to to pull a trigger on him rather than Grisham at that point. Arozarena's StatCast numbers are favorable in terms of hard hit and barrels and all that. I mean, it's not the type of player I usually think about at this point, given the track record again, questions. But when we're comparing these two, I'm gonna go with the Rosarena.
Ellen?
This is so interesting. So for me, I don't know. Maybe my cop-out answer is if what you need here are steals, then Grisham is definitely the option to take. And I think that both of these players, well, I think that Arozarena, the yellow Arozarena of Texas is what I call him, is pushed up to this point because of like his spectacular offseason because of his spectacular postseason. And I think that Grisham is pushed up to this point because of the steals, but I think that's fair because I think that, not only was Trent Grisham one of only a few players in 2020 to have double-digit homers and steals, he's definitely more likely to, I think, exceed the projections for his number of stolen bases in 2021 than Arozarena is, if only because at least most of the time he's going to be hitting first instead of Arozarena is going to probably be third. Or potentially he might move to second or fourth or something like that. But I think that also being on the Padres are always running. I just think that Grisham is going to have more opportunities to steal. And I also think if you look at his minor league track record, he's always been stealing bases and he's always had a relatively good success rate. And I just think I have more faith in that particular skill sticking than, for example, for Arozarena's power, which we don't see as much of a track record for in the minors. Now, granted, I know that he bulked up over this sort of extended offseason last year, and that's kind of part of what transformed him as a hitter. But nevertheless, I have to wonder if he's being relied on that team as the power guy, is he going to be running less anyway? So, I mean, I'd buy both of them here. I think in a vacuum, I would maybe rather have Arozarena, but I think most likely at this point in my draft, I'm looking for steals. And so I would probably take Grisham.
All right. Carlos.
Yeah, I totally agree. If we are going for steals, Grisham is the guy, and I think Randy is not going to run that much this year either. So if he's going to hurt your average, he's going to hurt if you're playing an OBP league, he's going to hurt you there. But so those Mondesi at a higher price, you can skip Mondesi and get a lot better bat and then go for Grisham. So that would be my plan for if I had to choose between these two guys, which I wouldn't draft either of them, to be honest. But if I had to pick, I would go Grisham.
Carlos,
can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah. So regards the lefties debate, I just remembered I wanted to say this. I was interested because super early in the season, Grisham was not doing well against lefties. And I was just like, oh, this is something that I'm going to have to monitor. But actually looking at his splits in 2020, he ended up doing better against lefties than righties. And if you look at it is not the case in 2019, but the splits are also not huge. So I don't know. I just wanted to add in that I think maybe people are overreacting, which of course nobody ever does in this community.
It was the Padres, though, that were overreacting. My concern was not that he shouldn't hit leadoff against lefties. It's that he didn't hit leadoff the last time they had a choice to make. And it's just a bit weird to me that was they made at the end of the year.
Yeah, but I wonder if they look and see that, oh, actually, even though he was I don't know, maybe it was because he was in the 8th spot. And so anyway, just thought I'd mention.
Carlos, why would you pass on both of these guys? Who then would you look to target in your upcoming drafts?
I mean, if you want stolen bases, my usual strategy is to get a little bit from a lot of guys that provide some extra in other categories. These guys, for example, Mondesi and Grisham, they hurt you too much in average or OBP, then it's really hard to regain that later on. And average, I think it's one of the hardest categories to try to recoup in later on in a draft. And Arozarena, I mean, yeah, he did amazing in the postseason, but what else, man? We have to see what you got there. And the outfield pool is really deep this year, so I think I could do a little bit, better and cheaper. That's my thought.
Well, actually, just counterpoint in OBP leagues, Grisham is probably fine. Like he had a pretty dreamy 12.3% walk rate this past year. So and that also, he had like a 1-to-1 walk to strikeout rate in the minors, and so I think that sticks. So yeah, more definitely like could be a drain on your average, but
yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's never been a more dramatic run scored in the World Series as his run in Game 4 on the Brett Phillips walk-off. I'm a big fan of always commenting on how players' hair looks because that's my hashtag hair goals, Rob. Yu Darvish was that before he got it cut before he went to San Diego, but Brett Phillips looked very good running around in the outfield there for the Tampa Bay there. But like what you had to say, everybody. Brent, looks like you're headed to Redemption Island instead. Ellen gets to rejoin everybody for the next challenge that we have coming up here. We're going to go ahead. Brent, you're still in the game. It's Redemption Island. Don't worry. You still get a chance to win the $1 million at the very end here. So don't worry. You just do well in the challenges that are upcoming. But back to the mound for our third player battle. I think that every time that I open up Twitter, one of these high upside arms are being hotly debated. Carlos, where do you go between Zach Plesac and Corbin Burns?
Oh, I'm taking Burns every single day of the year.
Oh, that's a hot take right off the bat, Carlos. Dive into that. I like that. That's going to make a lot of Plesac people very upset today.
I mean, look at his past 2 seasons, and well, taking into account that he was hurt, but CSW 32%. Swinging and strikes almost 17%. He makes people chase. He proved that he could be elite, and I get it. It's a small sample. Some might say, okay, but you said the same about Rosarena before, that he only did it for a couple of days. But in the case of pitchers, it's usually, when they find the things that click, it tends to stick, and it's not like he didn't have the pedigree before. It's just that it wasn't working as everyone was expecting. So I do this silly aggregator where I use a couple of metrics, and Burns is like 20% better than Plesac there. So that's a big Corbin Burns for me. Even at that, he's very pricey for this season. It's not the same bargain as we had last year.
What about you, Ellen?
So I think I'm gonna go Zach Plesac. And the oft quoted stat about Corbin Burns is the discrepancy in his home run to fly ball rate, which was 39% in 2019 and 4.7% in 2020, which they're like hilarious numbers on both ends. And of course, like, I understand that he transformed himself as a pitcher and he was ditching the fastball, and that's a lot of the reason why he got crushed. But basically, if you look at his in zone percentage chart on Baseball Savant, it's like a Kandinsky painting. And like, I know we're not going to see 2019 Corbin Burns again, but he had a whip of 1.84, like 1.84 as a whip. So for me, even though I feel like this is an excellent combination of like, we don't actually know who these pitchers are, and both of them have xERAs that are about a run higher than their actual ERAs. Part of the reason that I'm picking Plesac is because he just had more innings per start. So I know it's a very few number of innings, but he was typically pitching more than 6 innings every single one of his starts. He still went 7 and 6.2 innings, even in the starts against the Twins and the White Sox, where he was a little bit roughed up. And for me, I just feel like I have faith that his increased strikeout rate from this past year might be a little bit more sticky. And so if we get his xERA of 3.38, but we still get his 28% K rate this year, I'll be happy with that. And part of the reason for that was, even though he was getting a little bit less break on his slider, it was breaking much closer to the plate. So it was just more deceptive. And the changeup was breaking more horizontally, sort of swerving right out of the zone to lefties. So even though I know that the wonderful leaders of Pitcher List, Alex Fast and Nick Pollock, have talked about the fact that he's kind of a two-pitch pitcher to righties and lefties, I still feel like he can adjust if that ends up being a problem.
Brent?
Yeah, I'm going to go Plesac too. I mean, what kind of holds me back a little bit with Burns is just the walk rate. I mean, Ellen mentioned the high whip, and
It's terrifying.
and I think that and I think that where you're picking here, that's just a considerable downside for me. Although, I mean, I get it. He's gonna likely give you many more Ks. He's fun to watch and all that sort of thing. But if it's between these two, I'm just a little bit more believer in Plesac. Again, the performance uptick last year was tied to kind of these pitch mix changes. And what stands out to me is that he was always good. He was always a good control pitcher. Kept the walks down, and even with those changes, was still able to command everything there. I mean, I think it's tough for both because they're both, and that's why they're together here, right? That's why it's a tough thing, is that they're both, short careers so far. And, I certainly don't expect, again, the 2020 level Plesac. And one final thing, I mean, I think sometimes we don't pay enough attention to, or I don't anyway, the team situation. I mean, Cleveland just has a great track record recently of developing, getting these pitching prospects at various levels of prospect hype to like another level. And so Plesac in that way, yes, it's not a measurable necessarily, but has that going for him where sometimes that can be sort of like a tiebreaker if you're at these two, if you're debating these two similar players.
Rob, want to clean it up here?
Yeah, I think this is a really dangerous video clip to be putting on record because Corbin Burns could embarrass the crap out of all of us saying anything negative about him. He could easily be a top 10 starting pitcher this year. His slider is that good, and the skills are that good that if he consolidates and takes another step forward in 2021, we could look truly absurd. You guys passed on Burns for Zach Plesac. It's really a danger there. And Nick Pollock's the kind of guy, the kind of jerk who would pull that video out 12 months from today and show it at the beginning of a panel. And I
but at least we won't be on that panel.
Almost certainly not.
Rob. How dare you?
This is Paul Sporer makes his return next year on the panel. So yeah, I think Burns could easily be that guy, but I also don't disagree at all with all the comments that Ellen and Brent and everybody made about him. I also couldn't be any lower on Zach Plesac. Like, I think he will be Cleveland's 5th best starting pitcher this year from a fantasy perspective. That it says as much about how I think of their other starting pitchers as I do Plesac. But I think Plesac is it's a trap. Like it's the proverbial trap pitcher. But if you put a gun to my head and I was drafting today, I think I still take Zach Plesac because it comes back to volume. I trust not just, though I do trust the Cleveland pitching machine. I think Cleveland, I don't care what Tito says. I think they're going old school. And they're going to be a franchise that is going to allow their starting pitchers, maybe not one young starting pitcher, but certainly Plesac and the other young starting pitcher, not McKenzie. McKenzie, I have some volume concerns about. But I think of Plesac, I can easily see him making 32 starts and going hard in all 32 starts. And I don't think that's just not how Milwaukee has done things. And I get you can say he's going to add 100 innings. They've said he's going to add 100 innings, and they're going to be great innings. That's why I don't think you're wrong to be judging Burns. But gun to my head, even though I'm so down on Plesac, I think I take Plesac over him.
Rob, what we just did is we just took your entire clip and we have saved that to the cloud, and we are going to replay that back for the next 2 or 3 times that we have this panel in the upcoming years here.
They'll play it when Burns wins the Cy Young.
If you acknowledge the likelihood that you're about to be embarrassed, it's not embarrassing. I've acknowledged that there's a good chance I'll be embarrassed here.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's interesting that everybody so far in the first 3 player debates that we've had, everybody's kind of stood out on an island. So we've had Ellen there, we've had Brent there. Now Carlos heads there. I can't wait for Rob to go there. I think that we're very excited about maybe on this next one, we'll finally get him to get over there. But interested to hear your takes on our 4th player battle between 2 shortstops who bring a very, very different set of skills to your team. So obviously when you're drafting, we've talked about stolen bases before, how we kind of like to get a little bit from every position there. Well, this player from the shortstop position from the Kansas City Royals does exactly that. And that's what everybody's been discussing so far. Brent, let's start us off. Who you planting your flag on between Adalberto Mondesi, very, very hotly debated player every single time, just like Plesac. We will probably bring this back up as well next year for PitchCon, Brent. So whatever you say, just know that we are archiving everything. We're going to compare him to Corey Seager, who kind of maybe went through his breakout season last year. You know, last year he went through a slash line of 307, 358, 585. He had 15 home runs. I know it's a shortened sample. I wonder how many times during PitchCon we've heard shortened sample. I don't know. Can Nick draw that back?
Definitely be a drinking game.
Oh my gosh, that would somebody might be very sick
drinking game
right now. Brent, you want to lead us off between these 2 starting shortstops? What's your opinion here?
Yeah, I mean, Mondesi is just one of the most difficult players for me to roster at all. I just can't, especially where he's gone here in the second round. And I get the explosiveness. I get the, massive, stolen base floor that he gives you. But I just can't get over kind of the constant in-season volatility. I mean, you go back to September 2018, he had that 8 home run, 14 stolen base September. Woo! And last year he was terrible for the first month. And then in September, 6 homers and 16 stolen bases. When I'm just for me, when I'm picking a player like in the middle of the second round where I need to pick Mondesi if I'm going to get him, I can't quite get over that. And then when I add on some of the injury history, now maybe it was fluke and all that, but he still hasn't really given us a full season of at bats, and his really atrocious plate skills. I mean, that all just adds up to me as just the risk profile overall is just too high than what I am comfortable taking in the second round. So this one's an easy one for me. I'm going Seager, and sure there's health issues in the past, but he's just been much more steadier to me than Mondesi. His good contact rate, gives him a BA floor. You talked about the power last year. His hard hit metrics and all those indices are going up. Some of our gauges said actually, even after the incredible 2020 he actually got cheated a little bit. Was his, we have an expected home run total and all that sort of thing was actually higher than what he did. So, like I said, all that sort of thing for these 2 guys. This one's easy for me. I'm going Seager.
Ellen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is also the easiest one so far for me. And, I'm aware that it could be that getting over his shoulder surgery is what drove the sort of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of Mondesi's 2020 season. But like to me, hitting 179 in August and 356 in September is the subtitle that comes after the Adalberto Mondesi story. So yeah, it's a floor issue. And for me, I'm definitely taking Corey Seager because it's possible that, he's going a little bit later than Mondesi for one. And I, like Brent, I'm like, I'm not taking this guy who was, what was it? He was in the bottom 3% of the league this year in ex-WOBA was Mondesi. Like, I'm not taking that guy in the second round. I'll take a flyer on him and like the 8th round, but not the 2nd. Whereas with Corey, I feel like you might be getting, we're on a first name basis, by the way, clearly, Corey Seager and I. With Corey, you're getting a first round player, because it's possible that his breakout from this past season really sticks. He had the 4th best X slug in 2020 after Soto, Freeman, and Harper. So we might not get a prorated 2020 in 2021 for Seager, but also we might. And I just feel like this is a point in the draft where I would rather get a really solid hitter like that. And also, with Mondesi's injury history, I don't actually want to entrust all of my stolen bases to him. I don't want to, be like, great, I got 57 stolen bases. I don't ever have to worry about it again. I would rather, sort of like Carlos was saying earlier, I would rather maybe get a 20 stolen base guy and then a few 15 stolen base guys and kind of piece it together that way. Or like trust somebody like Trey Turner or Tatis. Like, I would trust them to get the stolen bases and like stay on the field. And Mondesi, I just don't want to pay that price.
I want to build the drama up to Rob Silver heading to Redemption Island by himself here. So I feel like I already know where Carlos might head here. But Carlos, take it away. Who are you going to look to draft between these two starting shortstops?
Oh, Team Corey for sure. I'm in first name basis too with him, so
Nice.
you are not alone in there. No, definitely for me there is not even a discussion there. I wouldn't draft Mondesi ever, and that's something that when you play fantasy baseball, it's gonna catch you back if it's some time further in time. But I mean, the guy adding to what Brent said, he was having an OPS of 440 until September 3rd. Then from them he batted almost 1,200 OPS. So that's kind of too crazy for me to handle. And I get it. We don't see any more elite base stealers than in the past, but I would get my stolen bases somewhere else. And a guy that lives in the last third of the WOBA percentile, he's not going to take you anywhere. And even if he steals 100 bases, if someone else gets those 100 bases, good, he's going to be the top guy in that category. You can still be second or third, so I wouldn't get Mondesi.
Rob, clean sweep here. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Ellen. This is the easiest by far, so I won't take time. The only thing I point out is there have been 218 players since 1960 who have stolen 50 or more bases in a year. It's a lot. That's what you're buying with Mondesi. Only one of them has an OBP in that season lower than 280. Only 2 of them have it lower than 290. So, and there are some bad hitters who have stolen 50 bases who just happen to be fast. Mondesi's career OBP is 284. There's a lot more risk than people think here, and our game is different than real baseball in lots and lots of ways. But this comes down to one of them is a very good baseball player, one of them isn't a very good baseball player, and sometimes you should just take the good baseball player, and that's Corey.
Yeah, I think there are also some concerns with Mondesi, with Benintendi coming over there as well. Does he move down the order? We've talked that he is a super streaky player. He is that type of player, though, that could potentially win you a couple weeks if you're in a head-to-head format, but there's a lot of risk and reward, obviously, coming from the expert panel here. I think the number one thing talked about with Corey Seager is he's in that 95th percentile or better in barrel rate, X-slug, XBA, WOBA, hard hit, and average exit velocity. I think this is the year that Corey Seager is really making us all become a believer that he moves to the upper echelon of all those starting shortstops. So mark it in the book, Corey Seager. Nobody heads to the island. Very, very exciting about that. We're all still well within the game. Let's move on to our next player battle that we have here. As host of the SP Streamer podcast, I am contractually obligated to go against everything that my co-host Michael Simeone says on every single player debate. It just makes for a better podcast, I feel like. But Michael, who was on the starting pitcher options panel earlier. So Ellen, we do have a clean slate. He's not here. He's not watching over us. He's not going to be like a Nick Pollock and pop in. I thought he would pop in right there, but let's move on to discuss who fantasy players should be targeting between a pair of really super dazzling arms, but injury concern is there. And a lot of players' ADPs have been going down no more than Dinelson Lamet as well as Jesus Luzardo. Let's start it off. Ellen, what do you think between these two sets of arms? Even though San Diego went out there and pretty much decided that they were going to sign or trade for every starting pitcher in the league, does that mean that Dinelson Lamet's value just absolutely plummets in your eyes?
A little bit. Yeah, this is really hard. This is the hard one because I'm sort of like, I don't want to take either of these guys where they're going right now. And I think I'd have to take Luzardo, but it's just the injury concern for Lamet. I just think that the Padres obviously assessed both Clevenger and Lamet and decided that only one of them needed Tommy John, but I'm still nervous about it. Like maybe they were just like, well, his elbow's like slightly hanging together by a thread, and so let's see if we can run him out there. And they've been, very clear that they want like 8 starting pitchers. And yes, like Snell and Darvish and Musgrove also have injury risk, so it's not all landing on Lamet, but still, it's partially that AJ Preller has been sort of taking a like, well, we'll see how it goes attitude towards it, and it seems like a lot of the people in the organization sort of feel the same way. So yeah, that's the only reason. I feel like otherwise, obviously, this is what's driving his cost down, and otherwise it would be an amazing price for him. Like I'm not out on Lamet because of the 2-pitch issue. It's just an injury concern. But there's a lot of problems for Luzardo too that I'll maybe let somebody else talk about. Or I can.
I am muted. Them. Sorry about that. Rob, you want to carry?
I thought I read your lips there, but wasn't sure. So Lamet came out this past week when he reported to spring training, and he said what I think was intended to make everybody feel better about him, which was basically, and I am paraphrasing here slightly, he was 3 pitches away from his arm falling off, but luckily he stopped just before the arm fell off, and he's feeling great right now. And that scared the crap out of me, and I was already pretty worried about him. It's the kind of thing. Could I see velocity numbers and starts in spring training that convinces me and tells me a story of how Lamet is going to get through 6 months of a season? Yeah, and the odds of me regretting it really soon thereafter are super high, because clearly the Padres knew he was 3 pitches away from his arm falling off, and they caught it just in time, and they spent their offseason. This wasn't the only motivator, but when they traded for their 9th starting pitcher, I think sort of was the motivator. And that's the thing. A healthy Lamet is obviously a very good pitcher, but they have options. So it's not just binary. They can workload manage. They can do all kinds of things with him. But there are so many different paths where I see his season going not awesome. And with Luzardo, there are also paths. But it almost is like just which direction is the arrow pointing. Right now, Lamet's arrow is pointing like this, and Luzardo's arrow is pointing this. Both of them have the capacity to be really good per start pitchers. But if I had to take one of them, and there is a roster construction where I am taking one of them, right? Like if I have a really safe pitcher 1, and then I have Kyle Hendricks as my number 2, then Jesus Luzardo could be a great, like, I need some upside here. But it's pretty easy until I see a couple of Lamet spring training velocity readings. I assume he is hurt. I'm a bad man, and if I lose out on a great season, that's okay. I will live with that.
Carlos?
This one I hated because I love Lamet. I've been cheering for him the whole couple of seasons, and he is. I mean, they say that he only has 1.5 pitch, that he has to survive only because of his slider, but the results are there. He's a really good pitcher, and in a vacuum, I think he's the best pitcher between both of them. But the health concerns are just too big to ignore. And Luzardo, I mean, he didn't have the best of the seasons, but it were two particular outings that got the worst out of him during the season. So I think he's the higher floor in terms of not getting hurt before or things like that, and I would take him just because of that. But honestly, right now, I think Lamet is the best pitcher, but health issues are there.
Brent.
Yeah, I'm just out at Lamet at that price with the injury. I just think that the two pitch thing is significant for me in thinking about how, while the pitches that he has and the results he got last year were very good and incredible, I'm not convinced that that's going to work in the rotation long term. I mean, I think Rob makes a great point. Well, others made too, with the additions to the San Diego rotation there. If in fact they do baby Lamet or hold him down some, I mean, that affects this, right? I mean, because we're in a spot where we're drafting starting pitchers, and we know that innings are going to be important. So those risks, I think, are enough for me to kind of stay away from Lamet. And I read this. I read his statement too this week, very much as Rob did, and as many of us did. Is like it came across a little differently to some of us, I think, than what was intended. I go back to last year thinking about Luzardo and where he was, and to me, he was kind of hyped a little bit too high. And sure, the 2020 was disappointing and all that, but there's some aspect, and we haven't really talked about it yet, where or haven't mentioned it in this way, that I think that there's some folks that say, just throw 2020 out, and I think there's some merit to that. Like that the season was so crazy, the ramping up and then shutting down and then coming back and with all the protocols, and it's not like 2021 is going to be normal in a sense, but there are some players which I think have more, whose performances you can more kind of put aside and kind of revert a little bit more back to what we expected in 2020. And while I believe that we were a little too high, or the community was a little bit too high on Luzardo last year, he's 95 from the left side, has more an expansive pitch mix than Lamet, and he's 23. He's 23 years old, and like Rob said, to me, the arrow for him is just going up. I mean, he's could be that he's still making adjustments and stuff. So I all that to say, I'm definitely going Luzardo here if I have this choice between these two players.
Brent gives a great point there, and I want to spread that out to everybody else as well. Are you essentially going into 2021 and looking into the past of 2020 and saying to yourself, because it is that shortened season, because it is such a wonky, crazy year that we just came out of, that essentially you're going to go back to 2019 stats? Is that something that everybody here is looking to do? I mean, what are your thoughts on that Brent was kind of discussing?
It's definitely something that I'm doing if there's even a slight amount of discount on the player. But for me, there's really no discount on where Luzardo is going. And like none of his pitches, even though like I'm also in love with his arsenal, none of them performed as well last year by like expected batting average or whiff percentage as they did the previous year. So even if it was like, oh, you can get him 20 spots later, then I would be like, okay. But yeah, that's just what I'm a little bit like, yeah, I don't know that I want to pay that price. But in general, yes, actually. I'm all about being like this person is getting a huge discount because of 2020, but I will take them because I wanted them going into last year.
I think it's a draft strategy.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's a draft strategy you have to consider, in the back of your mind somewhere when there's these tough choices, is just to remember, the sample, like obviously the sample size we had last year is small, and it was so, the situation was so different. How much does that change for that? And I don't think it's across the board, but it's something I think for me, I'm trying to keep in mind during draft season.
What I've been trying to do is the players I really like who had great 2020s. I'm weighing those quite high. The players I like who had bad 2020s, I'm discounting the season entirely, and vice versa. And I find that less sleep well at night. No, I agree. It's kind of an extreme regression drafting, whatever you want to call it, of discounting it. I think is a very viable approach this year. It's an interesting counterfactual. We didn't have StatCast, so if the 2020 season had happened in 1997 or 1994 when the strike took place, and therefore all of us who are smart would say you can't take a 11 start sample and give it much weighting. I think there'd be less recency bias, less weighting heavily, because we know it's not all stupid. We know some StatCast data stabilizes a lot faster, but it also can trick us and play games with us. The last debate we're having is a good example. I think in some ways of this. So it's really tricky mentally. It's a mental game in a lot of ways, how to weigh 2020, I think.
Interesting and fair points all around. I did mark that down against Danilis and Lamette. That makes me sad. I'll cry about it off air here, and I'll take the advice of everybody on the panel. We are up against the clock here, and Papa Nick is going to be popping in very soon here. But I do want to get to our last pair of players here today. I know Chris Towers, Mike Curlin, Brad Johnson, and Michael Beller also had some thoughts on their panel, which talked about sleepers and busts all the way back from day one of this epic, crazy, fun event, PitchCon. Rob, who are you more likely to grab shares of between the two third basemen in this landscape of Chris Bryant and Ke'Bryan Hayes? Where are your thoughts on those two players headed into 2021?
Chris Bryant, he's a very good example. I don't know what the hell I don't know how you can be Chris Bryant and be unable to hit the ball out of the infield, basically. Like he popped up in shallow right field. It was a successful at-bat last year. It was wild. I don't think we'll ever see 2016 Chris Bryant, MVP Chris Bryant again. But if I look at his 2019 stat line, 31 home runs, 108 runs, 77 RBIs, 282 batting average, I get that there are underlying things that were going down like this, which is one of the reasons lots of smart people are putting lots of credence in 2020. I cannot imagine how Hayes can get 185 runs plus RBIs in that Pittsburgh lineup. I don't think you can hit 50% ground ball rate and get to 31 home runs. He could get a 282 batting average. I think Chris Bryant's 2019 is still well within his skill set and his range of outcomes, and that's a top 60, top 65 player at a much discounted rate. So give me all the Chris Bryant this year.
Carlos?
Yeah, I have to agree with Ryan. As much as I love Hayes, which I think it's going to be an amazing baseball player, maybe as soon as 2021, he has a lot of underlying metrics, like his dynamic hard hitting rate is really good. His launch angle tightness is going in the elite way. But I'm going to go with the proven guy, even if 2020 was this train wreck that we saw. I mean, it's like Rob said, he cannot forget how to bat from one year to the other year. So let's conveniently forget 2020 for Chris Bryant.
Shortened season? No, I'm just kidding. Brent, you want to tell us your opinions real quick, and then we'll get to Ellen, and then we will get out of here today.
Yeah, sure. I'll just quickly. I mean, this is the closest one for me. I would go back and forth. I actually would probably slightly lean Hayes, but I totally get Rob's thing of just like, the injuries and how bad Bryant was. But I believe the scouting reports of Hayes of just the plus batting average, and I think the power is one that will come. And I think, despite the fact that it'll be in probably a lesser lineup and maybe not as good as a park, I mean, is there going to be as much pressure on Hayes as there is Bryant, in his walk year coming off that injury? So I'm gonna slightly say Hayes, but I would not be surprised if I end up with Bryant. It's on some teams.
Ellen, you start us off, end us.
I'm gonna take both. I'm gonna take both of them. Yeah. No, I'm way in on both of these guys at their prices for a lot of the reasons that have already been said, and other reasons that we don't have time for. So I'll just be brief. If I am forced, gun to my head, to take one, I'd probably take Chris Bryant. But yeah, I definitely want both of them.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's opinions here. Everybody coming out. It's great to meet all of you. Great to have you all here. I believe we are moving on. I don't if Nick wants to pop in here. Hey, Nick.
Guys. Oh, what a fantastic panel. Seriously, I had a ton of fun with that. Rob, thanks again for, doing great in the player debates 2021. Doug, an amazing host here.
Thank you.
Brent, Ellen, Carlos, all of your thoughts are very, very well received here. Awesome stuff. And yeah, thanks so much for being a part of PitchCon. This was fantastic and really, really special that you were able to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.